Let's make a bug using recycled materials such as magazines. First, you need to choose a bug that's going to work well for this project. There are lots of beautiful bugs out there, but you need to choose one that's very thick, one that's going to fill your paper. This bug can be realistic, or it can be from your imagination. This is the bug I used for my inspiration. The first thing I had to do was design my bug. I looked at the image that I just showed you, and I started drawing with my pencil. I'm trying to fill my page the best that I can. Try to make sure that your bug is really interesting, but when you're adding your shapes and lines, make sure that they're simple enough to create in a collage with our paper. If you're having a hard time coming up with the design, remember, shapes and lines make the best designs. As soon as you have your paper design done, you're ready to transfer that image to your final piece of paper. I'm using a marker here because it was very hard to see the pencil. You can feel free to use your pencil. I'm creating this design on a cardstock, which means it's a thicker type of paper. This will help out when we add our glue and our magazines. Now it's time to choose the pieces of paper that we will be adding onto our final piece. I'm taking magazines and choosing the colors that I'm really interested in using for my bug. I'm going to take small pieces of this magazine and rip it up. These pieces are actually pretty small. We don't want to make them so small that we can't handle them when we're adding the glue, but we want to make them small because they need to fit into all the little spaces that we have on our bug. There's lots of different ways to apply your glue, but what I'm doing here is spreading it out with my finger. A nice thin layer of glue is going to work perfect for this project. As you're placing down your paper, you're going to notice you'll be covering up your glue. If you need to, just apply a little bit more, spread it out nice and thin like we did before. For this section that I'm working on right now, I filled it completely in. As you can see from my design, I actually have some pieces that I need to add on top. So that's exactly what I did. Once I had the base done, now I added the additional shapes. So I created that oval looking piece with a blue piece of paper on top of what I've already added on. Sometimes this makes it a little easier. I continued to add and add and add, using many different colors, many different shapes. Again, thinking about the simplest way to do this, maybe sometimes I need to fill in a whole space and then add the extra details on top. That makes it easier for me. Finally, I'm going to start cutting this bug out. I love the shape that I have, but to make that shape emphasized, I'm going to cut it out of my tag board that I was using. Now that our bug is all cut out, we're going to add it onto another piece of paper. This is called mounting our bug. And what I'm going to do is add the antennas and the legs using some pieces of paper. These are just scrap pieces of paper as well, so we've reused a lot of material for this project. You can use any technique that you want. Maybe wrapping it around something like a pencil or a brush, or bringing it back and forth in an accordion style like I'm doing right now. There's lots of different ways to make your papers three-dimensional. Here I decided to use some of the scrap that I had earlier from the bug, so I'm using that tag board and covering it up with some magazine. I want this to be symmetrical, so I folded it in half as I made my cut. This I'm going to use for the legs, for the back legs, right back here. I can add those on by just adding some glue and placing it back on. I'm incorporating it with the accordion style that I was working on earlier. You'll see that I attached the legs and the antenna in different ways on this project. Sometimes it feels best to add it right onto the bug. Sometimes it feels best to add it right onto the mounting board. I want my bug to be three-dimensional again, so I'm bending it just a little bit so that it actually curves up. I want everything to be very secure onto the mount, so I'm making sure to glue down everything. Just a little dot of glue is working perfectly. There you go. Here's our recycled paper bug.